In this video, we'll talk about the AuthPoint Logon App, which protects computer logons with MFA. We'll cover how to set up and install the Logon App and how to troubleshoot it. Let's get started. We can see the system requirements for the Logon App here. The Logon App runs on Windows and Mac computers to protect the user logins to the operating system. When you install the Logon App, users must authenticate with AuthPoint MFA before they can log into that computer. MFA is required for both local logins and over remote desktop. Here we can see the process of using the Logon App. In step 0, the administrator deploys the Logon App to each computer with the installer and a configuration file. After the Logon App is installed, the user will log into the computer normally by entering their username and password. Once their credentials have been validated by the computer, the authentication screen for the Logon App appears and prompts that user for their second authentication factor if required. Now we'll cover how to configure and install the Logon App. In Watchgrab Cloud, we'll navigate to Configure at the top, then AuthPoint, then we'll go to Resources on the left. Here we can choose to create a new Logon App resource. I'll select it in the list and then click Add Resource. Then we just need to fill out a few fields, a name for our resource, and a support message if users need help. We can also enable access for non-AuthPoint users. With this setting, we can configure up to 50 usernames that will bypass the Logon App when they log in. And these users do not need to have an AuthPoint user account. An IT department might use this feature to add shared administrative accounts that they do not need in AuthPoint. But be careful adding access for non-AuthPoint users, as it does decrease the overall security of your environment. If a user has not been added to your AuthPoint account or the access for non-AuthPoint users list, then that user cannot access any computers where the Logon App is installed. When we create resources, we also need to define how users will authenticate to those resources based on their groups. I have clicked Authentication Policies on the left, which is where we configure these settings. In this account, I only have a single group for my users, and I already have a policy in place that enforces multi-factor authentication for the group. This policy is applied to all resources on the account, so my new resource is already included and my users are authorized to use it. We recommend always enabling the OTP or QR code options in authentication policies that include a Logon App resource. These options enable users who cannot reach the internet to log into the computer with MFA. You can use authentication policies and policy objects to configure the level of access that you need for all of the different users in your environment. For more information about authentication policies and how to configure them, refer to the Using AuthPoint Authentication Policies video. For this video, we'll show how to use the Logon App with Windows 10. Here on the Downloads page is the section for the Logon App for 64-bit Windows. We'll need to download both the installer and the configuration file to continue with the installation. The config file will be the same for all of the computers we want to install the Logon App into. Now that we've downloaded these files, there are two ways that we can use them. As long as the config file is in the same directory as the installer, we can simply run the installer to install the Logon App. If the config file is located in another location, maybe for mass deployment across a network, we can also use command line options to install the Logon App instead. Please refer to our help documentation for more information on this. In this case, I'll just run the installer, and once the Logon App is installed, it asks me to reboot to begin protecting the computer with MFA. It is important that this computer has internet access when it completes the reboot, because the Logon App will need to download additional data after the installation to function. I rebooted my computer and I'll log in with my user using RDP. The username I use to log into this computer must match a user in my AuthPoint account to continue. The Logon app can enforce MFA for local users on the computer, as well as domain users from LDAP or Azure AD. However, the Logon app cannot enforce MFA for online Microsoft accounts which are used on the computer. These are personal accounts that can also log into Microsoft.com and Office 365. After I enter my password, the Logon app appears and automatically sends me a push request. I'll deny the push and we'll see the error message. The user can disable the automatic push if they want. I can click the question mark in the corner to get more information about the Logon app and see the support message. Then I'll click the one-time password and provide the OTP from my token. After I'm authenticated, I can access the desktop. The Logon app keeps a connection open to Watchgrab Cloud to track any changes that are made, and it stores a copy of the access policy locally on the computer. This local policy is used whenever a user authenticates offline. However, the Logon app software itself does not auto-update. So any future releases of the Logon app will need to be installed by the administrator manually by running the new installer on the computer. The config file is not required when you update the Logon app. So, what happens when authentication doesn't work? Well, the Logon app does display error messages on the screen. For example, here I've entered an incorrect one-time password. We can see the error message as well as a request ID, which can be helpful for tracking this request through AuthPoint. The Logon app does not record any local logs on the computer, but the computer's application or security event logs may contain useful information when troubleshooting installation or authentication problems. The audit logs found in Watchgrab Cloud under Administration at the top, then Audit Logs, can be helpful as well. I've filtered the list for the user in question to find any logs related to their logins, and I can click on them for more information. Here we can see the same request ID from earlier with the error message. If the Logon app is not able to communicate with Watchgrab Cloud, then you may not see information here. If you attempt to install the Logon app and find yourself locked out of the computer, first double check your configuration. You may be able to fix a username or access policy issue and successfully authenticate. If you are not able to get it working, there are two options for removing it. You can delete the Logon app resource in AuthPoint to disable all Logon app installations. Once deleted, the Logon apps on every computer will allow all users to log in and must be reinstalled to start over. The other option is to boot a computer into safe mode, start the Windows installer service, and then uninstall the Logon app on that computer. Refer to our knowledge base for more information on this. That will do it for using the Logon app. In this video we covered how the Logon app protects logins to Windows and Mac computers. We showed how to configure and install the Logon app, where you can find log messages, and how to remove the Logon app if it's not working.